Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Jupiter hour, actually Mars night. So the midheaven is close to Deneb Algadi, and it's a good thing to call him Deneb Algadi. Moon is 19 degrees Taurus, sextiling Venus. Okay, Jupiter is in 14 degrees conjoining Sirius, and is a great thing to call on Sirius. Deneb Algadi has to do with wealth redistribution. Is ruled by Saturn, that is conjoining Neptune in 1 degree Aries, and Mars is in Libra. So at this time, let's just say we are approaching elections in certain countries in Europe, in Israel, in United States. We are approaching a sports game series season, and there are many things that arise. And so those outdated rituals that are done around the places where winning is important. Okay, if you're in a democracy and people get to vote, then winning the elections means something. Okay, and, and of course there is a war. But this is a situation where, a lot of rituals are being used, and some of them are outdated. Saturn Neptune is about the holistic meaning of ritual and the implications of what that ritual does on a long term. And the omen that I get is such. First of all, short about the Gilded Age. And this was a time where women of the aristocracy were marrying into men that lost their wealth because of nothing at all other than the fact that they were the landlords that profited off of basically slavery. And as there was a famine, and of course there will be a famine if there is slavery. In fact, we can think about Saturn in Aries as famine due to slavery. Why is there famine due to slavery? This is simply because Saturn is about boundaries. It is about rest as much as work. Think about Saturn as climbing a mountain, and the Saturn of Aquarius is the Saturn outside the system. It's the Saturn of the underdog. So, while Saturn definitely does mean dedication, it also means sleep. It also means rest. And when the conditions of Saturn are violated, then there is disease. If that is in the soil, it means that we are exploiting the soil, and the soil doesn't get to rest. Famine is a form of letting the soil rest as well. Famine is also about deprivation. So if people that work with the food that grows on the ground are deprived, then it is a cycle. And what happened with this Gilded Age is that those women were marrying these losing their wealth men, and they were called the dollar women, and they were saving the image of those landlords. Very much such thing is happening today, because it's still about real estate. The aristocracy is still around real estate. Their rituals are outdated as now when it came to the gilded aristocracy, the Gilded Age, they were saving the aristocracy from completely dying out due to inbreeding. And right now, we have a situation where the the rent that people expect from the tenants on both business and private sector is not yielding. People can't afford the rent. Okay, if the people that work the land, be that land agriculture or be that land the place, the housing, okay, if they are not profiting off of the real estate, they cannot cut dividends. And so what is happening is that the aristocracy that is owning that real estate is dying out. This is also why those are the ages where we have civil war. Okay? Why was the Civil War won by the side that chose to abolish slavery? They were not profiting off of agriculture. There was an industrialization, so they began to profit off of labor that is not agriculture. And so they were less reliant, they could adapt to not having slavery better to begin with. Now, it is only when agriculture is so industrial, and why would agriculture be so industrial to begin with, is when people don't have their own land, so they can't grow their own food. I go back to another time where the aristocracy almost died out, and that was a time of the Spanish flu. A lot of new money generation was created by the fact that people just died, and there was no lineage to hold that estate. And so what we are seeing right now is pretty much a situation where, whether by the very man-made excess natural disasters, um, or by any sector that relies on slavery, then that includes the mafia. Mafia relies on slavery, including the business of targeting individuals. If you think about it, this is a business where over one person, so many people have to work, but they don't work in a job that is satisfactory. And so it's a very draining. Okay, if they try to bring that person, okay, to kill themselves or to a breaking point and so on, and it's a very unsatisfying job. It's a job that where think about it, if a person that is a slave in the field is exposed to the plague, is exposed to many diseases, then in here, and we have a war, and on all sides and all frontiers, the soldiers begin to even unalive the commanders. Okay, so to see the condition of war. By the way, for those who have been wondering about the Gaza situation, there is loss of it's summertime and people are literally dying out simply because that there is no conditions for the soldiers, and that of course changes the frontiers. And when people have to fight in the summer, yes, This is, and when it comes to the outdated rituals that people use, and Neptune is about sacrifice. Saturn is ritual. Then Aries is about reason, rationale. Those that try to sacrifice, to do things that are unreasonable, okay, people that do things that are unreasonable, that's what it means. It's unreasonable to hold slaves. It's going to cost, it's going to have implications. If the person that deals with along the food chain, if the people that deal with the food that I'm supposed to put in my mouth along the food chain are not happy, well nourished, well rested, making a life while making a living, living their best lives, okay, joyous, then that affects what I will put, okay, what I will eat. It pertains to everyone, but particularly the aristocracy. The aristocracy used to have boots that are triangular shape because it signified that they don't work the land. You can't walk on that. What happened? Their toes began to crumble. And what happens? The feet. So they begin to lose sense with all that is, and a sense of connection was lost. Just because they wanted to symbolize the fact that they are upper class and don't have to work the land, so they can walk with uncomfortable shoes. This is the tradition of. So if you think about why people are walking with steel toes today, if you take it all the way back in history, it's triangular shaped shoes. That's basically, and it was supposed to be a status symbol. Okay, now it's a doom symbol. Okay, because only dumb person would volitionally go with those shoes. Um, okay, so those aristocracy habits that were completely rational, eventually they have implications. Saturn Neptune is where at the time where those implications begin to have a trajectory. And that is, for example, the bunkers. If you have smart bunkers, they might be doing what the old mansion, it's not an old, it's the mansion, the AI mansion that began to develop sovereignty and kicked out the billionaires. Bunkers is another thing that's built on smart technology. So now the people that were relying on the apocalypse not touching them might be rethinking Agenda 2030. And they have AI to convince. And so the things now, it's not to be very particular. I'm not saying that the world will start to make sense as of 2026. Yes, that's utopia. But many things that no longer make sense are just not going to be there. And we have two eclipses in September, and so there are many things that people do to win over more real estate, to win the elections, to win this, and they try to do sacrifice, or they try to do ritual that goes along the way of the Egyptians that were worshipping a cat goddess and sacrificed cat for her. It's doom. It's unreasonable. It doesn't make sense. Okay, the people that worship the fertility goddess and sacrifice babies for her. Yet, okay, you want babies, you kill babies. Doesn't make sense. You want something that will give you life, and you offer something dead. Or you offer the life or the soul of a person, but there is it's very dumb, and there is a limit to how much of people can gain from that. And the limit is where people begin to lose rather than winning what they wanted to win. Okay, and sometimes the only way people learn is that if they wanted to, let's say, win the election by doing that, they will lose the election. If they wanted to win over the estate or win over the land or win over in the dispute between um, uh, uh, world families at war, they will lose by doing that. And there are many ways we think about winning and losing. So in the beginning, they may not completely lose, but they might not enjoy. The estate would be haunted. Now they'll have to clear the estate. They'll have to correct the mistake that they've done. Um, and so nature gives a lot of leeway. It's a lot of leeway to make mistakes, but then there comes a time where, hey, if that is a mistake, it's going to not yield. Until people, now with Neptune, Saturn, people might also find it challenging to see what is it that is not yielding. And this is where we can have, natural disasters. Um, and this is where people begin to lose of what they wanted to win by doing a ritual sacrifice. This is particularly pertaining, and we're having a season where there are a lot of things that people need to win if they want the wealth. Whether it's a competition over a certain plot of land, competition over who will get to exploit the natural resources, a competition that is the election in democratic countries, sports game, and all those things that are done, the rituals that are done, and wars, of course. Now, Aries has a very humanistic aspect to it. So does Aquarius, so does Gemini. It's the human sign. Now, people mistake Aries because they say this is the ram, this is horns. Yeah, it's the head of the baby. So Aries pertains to horn gods as well as humanism, the I am. And Aries is where everybody learns that, oh my God, this is a human being. But they have different skin color. So, but they have different blood type. Okay, that's a human being. Good morning. A species called human being also includes these type of human beings, and and they begin to understand that um, the many twists and turns that they did, the tweaks that they did to get to where they are, they can't go on with those tweaks. So even if you look at the aristocracy, that they needed to marry women They basically needed to rejuvenate the bloodline. But why? Because slavery was not yielding, and there had famine. And so anything that is not respecting of sovereignty, Aries, will not yield sovereignty. Now, the most that people want to win is basically self-preservation, their sovereignty. They can't do it by sacrificing the sovereignty of another. And this is why these rituals begin to, the yield begins to deteriorate, particularly for the class that held that wealth. Okay, there's a polio spreading over Europe. COVID, for most people, it meant nothing unless they were threatening the aristocracy, and then we had assassinated astrologer. Pfizer was an astrologer. We had targeted astrologers. So those disasters, they are targeting the class that spreads them as well. In my previous video, I talked about how people within those certain classes want to speak and express themselves through the people outside those classes that are outside those rituals, that are not doing those rituals, like myself. And they try to be me. Because they want, and now it's not a bad thing to want to be me, because even though I don't have like the class and so on, I'm not doing those rituals. And people try to both express themselves and connect, but also they try to share the karma or share the responsibility that they cannot share. Some of them, not all of them. And what they try to win by doing the ritual, which is basically ritual abuse. What is a ritual? A ritual to win something may mean you give charity regarding to that topic. It may mean you cleanse yourself, or you cleanse, or you make a bath, or you meditate, or you envision. That's a ritual. What is a ritual abuse? Is you try to make a sacrifice of something that has a right to be. Now, many more things than what the aristocracy expects have a right to be. And whose being is essential so that you can take the life force or the creative force and win with that. Now, it doesn't work. And also, your win must represent those that you supposedly use to win. Okay, so let's say politics. Yeah, let's say your sector is women. Okay, a lot of populist right-wing leaders, their sector is women because they apply to, hey, those foreigners, they harm women. They harm women and children. Amazing. Now you have, when you win the elections, you have to actually represent women. So does ritual satanic abuse. Okay, it harms women and children. And well, so okay, and women would expect for to be whether it's having the right to vote, whether it's the banking system, whether it's being included not only if they are best fit to work, not only if they are mothers, not only if they are married, okay, and not be expected to compromise their well-being. Now, the more women learn about their well-being after Uranus in Taurus, they understand that, oh, there is a bad economic situation. Okay. Oh, some women work with no, that would be a work that compromises my will to live, that creates candida, that is creating endocrine system problems that could result in cancer, that harms my fertility, has way more, there's way more to that. And so the people that expect to win with the sector of women, they actually have to represent women. Can't traffic women and be representative of women. And so this is where the sacrifice or the ritual that harms, okay, that is now beginning to not yield. Even for the fact that, let's say, if the Gilded Age, they could marry a woman that would bring them money, that will bail out the aristocracy, and they could still wear nice clothes, even though the land was not yielding. So now it's kind of like, well, you can have the woman, but she needs to have a separate bank account. She needs to not be obliged to have any sort of intimate relations with you. She needs to have all these rights protected. She needs to have all these rights protected by a weapon as well. And here is something that arises. Mars right now is trining Pluto, separating from the trine to Pluto, and is climbing up to the square. And Mars-Pluto has to do with funding sovereignty, funding ideas. And so the crisis of the square between Mars and Pluto is the crisis of needing to fund for war, needing to fund for real estate, needing to fund for these losses that can occur with Saturn Neptune. And the entire strategy of the Mars, okay, any strategy that was built on being excessively scorpionic, because it's going to be in the first decan of Scorpio, it's the Scorpio, Scorpio, Scorpio. For example, why is the last decan of Scorpio in square with Deneb Algedi? Or the 22nd of Scorpio is a square of 22nd in Deneb Algedi. And this is because Scorpio is about transmutation, and the last decan of Aquarius is about wealth redistribution. Okay, the last decan of Scorpio is where we, I call it a euthanasia. Okay, if you have to kill, it is euthanasia, but it's not about being excessively cruel. It's not about, and the resolution to that square was the guillotine. It's like, hey, where it was not possible to transmute by going through the depth of the scorpionic psychological changes, It's kind of like, hey, that's very sweet, but we also need to have wealth redistribution. Okay, and the tension is that a recovering billionaire doesn't actually have money. If a billionaire went through the psychological process of wealth, and for those of you that have been pondering about me, one of the sentences that I began, my Pluto square, now my Neptune square, um, had to do with not wealth that's going through my bank account, but because I tend to satanic abuse, to the dissolution of these rituals, um, and it's basically curating of wealth. Okay, if you think about it on the scale of the money, that on the follow the money scale is the curation of wealth, and I come at an open door, an open gate, where now people begin to have things losing, things not yielding, and people like me that begin to offer opportunities and offer explanations, and offer strategy for that, are beginning to be important. Okay, this is why with people in that and that and that and that and that rank, listen to what I have to say. At this time in history, okay? And so I said, I'm building on a canoe. Okay, it's a kind of like, there's not much money running out there that is actually wealth, both by the ritual of how the money is comprised, and by the practice of how money is transferred and laundered. And it's all beginning to um, it's kind of beginning to have a trajectory. People are gonna know. Okay, there's only so you can traffic some of the people some of the time, but if you try to traffic all the people all the time, then they're gonna know that there's such thing as human trafficking, that there's such things that, like, hey, when do people begin to, like, hey, we're losing our rights? It's like they're standing on the verge of thinking to unalive themselves, and everybody's like, well, that's not a good thing to do. Well, the process is lengthy, and like, reasonably, why? If you want to kill all of humanity, it's like, no, we just want to enslave humanity. Well, you're overdoing that. People no longer want to live. Okay, we'll retract some, but then people cross the threshold, now they want freedom. Now they think, a woman that had to say no to a man, for example, she thinks about it. She said, oh, this man is coming to me from such and such family, from such and such things. Why am I not attracted? What's happening here? She thinks so with herself. Now she says, yeah, it's toxic behavior. Now she goes to work. Her boss treats her the same way. It's like, oh, this is like the man that tried to hit on me and maybe was looking attractive but was not behaving correctly. I would not be happy in that relationship. Oh, I'm not happy in my job as well. Then she changes a job, became that says she will work, I don't know, do business. Then she goes sees to renew contract with the landlord. Now the landlord is acting strange. This is what happened. Okay, and this is exactly what happened. One to one is what happened. People learned about red flags for narcissistic abuse. Okay, your husband is in the intelligence. Oh, they're defending the security of the no. No, that's not. Those rituals don't breed security. There are people that worked in security companies and are targeted individuals now. Over nothing. They worked in a security company. They stopped, they quit the job. That's it. Then what happened in the workplace? Me too. But this boss is narcissistic. Also the women. For this woman is narcissistic. She gained a position, a so-called feminist, but she doesn't promote women. She mistreats people. Okay, and then people begin to question that. You say, oh, feminism is not just for for one class. Then people began to question what's okay. Let's say there is COVID, or there is war, or there is crisis. Okay, people want their money as usual. Are they detached from what is happening in the working sector? Or people try to traffic for the tenants. It's like if the money is arriving as usual, then you have to be doomed to try to traffic your tenant. Now, no money. A person that you try to take all their creative energy from is not yielding, it's not going to pay you. The body naturally has its healing mechanism. People become sick at work. Okay, the body not yielding. The body's labor is yielding when a person gains from that in a way that is supportive of their sovereignty. Now again, it's not in one day, but Saturn Neptune is kind of like, well, it's time. It's time. Now, the Mars applying to square Pluto from Scorpio. Scorpio is the place where it's about harsh conditions. What you need to do to survive. And the Scorpio placement, it is survivalistic. It can thrive in survivalistic area. The square to Pluto is that now you have to fund for the opinion that, or the strategy that's outdated. So let's say the strategy was to sacrifice whatever to win a position where you're not dependent on people having to give you the right to win. Okay? Or in the last degrees of Libra, where your win was to overthrow something that is outdated. But now, if I talk about, let's say, populist leaders, people are going to be like, okay, what about satanic ritual abuse? Those women are not safe because of those groups of men that come from other countries and, what people call uncivilized. And yes, if a man beats the wife, then he is uncivilized. I mean, let's face it. But and I spoke with such men. Okay, I spoke with if I sit as human resources and in a company, and lady is with me, and she said, "Well, my husband is in jail, and I'm mad at the police. Why are they bothering these people and so on? Just people coming to work, or just people refugees?" And I called the husband, and the papers is by him. He says, "Yes, it's a problem because in Israel you cannot beat the wife." You're sounding completely helpless. He says, I'm in jail because in Israel you cannot beat the wife, and he doesn't know what to do. Okay, so in that sense, the word uncivilized is actually correct. He needs to have a strategy of method of communication with his wife, that his wife will not be too dominant, but also that he won't be too dominant, and so that family can grow. Now, he understands that when he arrives at another culture. And me, the person that needs to get the papers of this lady, as the papers is by the husband, so he needs to read to me the details. And I have to call him. He's in jail, so I'll call him in jail. Now, that's very cute. Let's say you take all of these people, whatever, okay, either they learn how to communicate, or they sit in jail, or whatnot, whatever. Then you have to deal with the very civilized person who is absolutely uncivilized. And that is the aristocracy. Okay? And or the people that are civilized by putting on a certain mask, but that would be what people call, whether it's the narcissistic abuse or the ritual abuse. And the expectation is that that extreme action would cover this topic as well. Okay, it's the deacon where Spica is at. It's about fairness. So people actually expect that fairness. Now, the square to Pluto is that if you did that for the mirror image of fixing something, no, people are going to want that to be fixed on a global scale. So people, for example, okay, a free woman also likes to travel. She needs to be safe all over the world. Okay, and your embassy in different countries need to protect her. Okay, let's say from Scorpio, it is about people want to the essence of how should I say that? The self-preservation instinct in harsh conditions is in contradiction with being able to fund for your self-preservation in an environment where we are reducing slavery. Now, people began to adopt the self-preservation through the harsh conditions, which in many cases is also satanic abuse. But the square here is that their strategy, Mars, will have to hold on a worldly scale. Okay, you can traffic some of the people some of the time, but you cannot traffic all the people all the time. And in addition, this is where everybody globally discovers the world's sovereignty. They also discover what has been limiting Saturn their sovereignty. Okay, this is where a woman that, let's say, couldn't work for a decade discovers that, hey, the person she lived with that she thought was not just the person she shares the house with or a good friend, they were doing some weird rituals. Okay, this is when you do the shadow work, when you transmute something, when you take rigorous action to recover. This is what Saturn in Aries is also about. Then the problems begin to arise, and for some people it's been very challenging because it's kind of like, hey, that person that I was dependent in my housing on, yeah, because I couldn't rent a place alone. Or then if you rent a place alone, that was a crooked landlord or a crooked realtor. And so what happens is that people worldwide discover sovereignty. Um, they decide that is in favor of sovereignty, and this is the trine here, is also the winning side, and this is Gemini. With Gemini, there's a limit to trickery. Okay, so it's like you can, if you win with trickery, you're not going to enjoy the win. And with Aquarius, there's something that pertains to entire humanity. So this is exactly the AI bunkers that were supposed to preserve people in. There's the bunker in Maastricht. Okay. This is the bunker. This, in the bunker in Albania. This is where the AI bunkers, because the smart system, they have to protect, they have to defend, they have to this. The bunker has to have a set of operations that is allocated to AI. And the bunker decides that these folks do too much dumb things for the system. We don't want them in the system. That can absolutely be the square. Okay, what you do for self-preservation is also real estate. So think about bunkers is not yielding. In Israel, we had 2 missiles falling and dropping on Beersheba that were distinctly different. One was on Soroka Hospital. They evacuated all the people before the missile dropped. I don't know. Usually there's alert, and then within 10 minutes the missile dropped. You understand that you don't evacuate an entire hospital department in 10 minutes. And there was nobody. There was not a single soul in that department. The missile dropped on the department, and the building was crashing. And then coincidentally, they had another hospital building in Beersheba that they transferred the people to. Okay? This was one missile dropping. Another missile dropping was in a relatively new house in a neighborhood where the people inside the safety room, unfortunately, died as well. Um, and it was those new buildings that have the safety room. Now, of course, when living bunkers are going to be marketed, it has a trajectory to require for more security, so the real estate that people will go after, okay? But it's also the case that the people that didn't have a safety room were not less safe or more safe than the people that did have a safety room. And it was also, people were informed that if a missile drops on a place where there's a local safety room, kind of like a shelter, they can't expect to survive for that direct hit. So I'm not saying there's going to be something with Iran, I don't know. But this is where what we do for self-preservation in harsh conditions that are excruciatingly competitive, and what we do to fund for that might be in a trajectory where Aquarius requires everybody to be safe. And Aquarius requires the person outside of the system was Capricorn, to be safe. So the single person, the single woman, the disabled person, the BIPOC person. And now those people have to fund for that. The ones that survive the self-preservation, social engineering, almost input-output, okay? Input clone, output superhuman, have to fund for everybody to be safe. They don't know how to do that. Okay? They have a little bit of a clue. Okay? It's like, okay, we have to do everything that we did. We have to do it differently so that now we don't eradicate but all these people that we're set to eradicate, but it seems to be that we are eradicated because of that. Okay, because who are the billionaires? They are the folks that survived the self-preservation. Okay, they survived the expandable children, they survived the rituals and so on. And now it's kind of like, well, the nature says no, nay. The bunker kicks them out. And so they kind of not to blame for the fact that they survived in the environment that they were brought up in, but they would need more than that to expand on and to, if you think about the one world government, then the people that, the children nobody came to save have to save the children. And this is the tension between the survivalistic method and the inclusivity of the disabled, the lower class, the underdog. And so a lot of them just try to identify the underdog, and for in many ways it's not untrue that they are underdogs because They had to survive a freaking Holocaust to live, and a Holocaust that nobody heard of even. At the same time, what it takes for humanity to survive is not Mein Kampf, a master race of people who will tend to self-preservation and have famine, have plagues, and have bunkers that kick them out in a nuclear holocaust. Okay, they're not to blame that they didn't know, because since infanthood they were growing in an environment that where only the fittest survive. And then they were what? Deteriorating inbreeding, deteriorating bloodline. And they have to learn how, just like that refugee person calling from jail. I don't know, maybe he was royalty in Africa. Sudan, North Sudan, South Sudan, maybe it was royalty there. Maybe it was aristocracy there. In here is a guy that beats the wife and is going to jail. Okay, so that's something to think about. And now the places where they were so aware of having to fund for something that they became really good with understanding Scorpio, the deeper psychological, occultistic mechanisms of money. And now they have to fund for everybody to be safe, but the way that they got to be safe, and it's not their fault, was surviving something where they adopted a strategy that doesn't stand the test of time for entire humanity to do. Okay, a common aristocracy person tended to ritual, satanic abuse, tended to sacrifice everything that they loved, tended to a culture where treason would be expected. And now they have now to win, they need to better provide for entire humanity. They have no clue on how to even begin. So they try this. We're ecosystemic. Okay, for the way you do ecosystems is so they're so informed about the mechanism of how money works, the occult, the ritual. But now the same principles are at the crisis of now they have to fund for surviving in a completely different environment where it's not about the fittest. It's not the survival of the fittest. And what they did for the survival of the fittest is deteriorating the race. At the same time, Chiron conjuncts Aries in Aries, and that's the Ubermensch, that's the cloning project. And yet, when this is a people that always knew one way of living, and it usually, you understand that the people that deal with that, some of them are young, some of them, yes, are toddlers, but some of them is simply that the practices, even within the rituals, they will begin to see that certain rituals, how should I say that? Not all of the rituals work anymore. Not all of the strategies work anymore. Okay, let's talk about like the Middle East. A lot of people went after 7th October, and there was ritual sacrifice of Israelis. Let there be no mistake there. It's not a lie. It's not a lie, and it's not a... Okay, even the people in the lodges in Europe felt that. How I know, we had a news teller for astrological magic. And people said that they felt it, all the ripples of that, they felt it all the way to the lodges. So, because usually the people that tend to that are people that are from the lodges. But Aquarius is exactly that person. Is absolutely not Masonic and is tending to science because they're curious to try to see what can they do and about life, and they try all the all the things that are available. And so, but when the response, yes, geographically, there's only one thing that you can say is the response, okay, which some deem may have been, okay, that let's just say, yes, the response. For lack of better housing, the response um, has been in such a way that a lot of Israelis thought that they are going to have that they're going to build their own Mar-a-Lago in Gaza, and their prime minister Bibi Netanyahu, that they hated and so on, says, "No, I'm ready to stop the war right now if they bring all the kidnapped people." He is no dumb, okay? He's Libra. He knows that has a trajectory. Okay, he knows you can fool some of the people some of the time. Now is the time. Now is kind of the time to be Abe Lincoln that abolished slavery. It's kind of like, okay, we just want to kidnap people and we're out of Gaza. Okay, then you have lineages upon lineages and Templars upon Templars that in Israel and outside of Israel that were building on having their Mar-a-Lago in Gaza. Okay, people were invested. There's going to be oil, there's going to be gas, there's going to be solar farms. Planes, net zero planes that travel so fast that they don't do a supersonic boom like the Concorde. Okay, energy has changed the trajectory. Gonna mine minerals in Gaza. Okay, that's the only reasonable thing, but they're gonna have to uh, take all the people that were ritually satanic abused out of the CIA tunnels, and they're gonna have to fund for that. These people are gonna need their housing first, um, and so Gaza is Israel's now, and this is exactly where the people that said, "Oh, this oil and gas, we take over the land. We know how war works. We're going to invest in oil, invest in gas, and everything's going to be fine." Um, we're going to have so many veteran homeless people um, the actual effect of war. Everybody after war, what happens? People want to. Everybody is becoming hippie. You think about the '60s. They were not hippies. They were satanically, ritually abused on a shit ton of drugs, and there was not free love there. This is why the generation after the boomers no longer could thrive. It is like because the boomers, people blame the boomers. The boomers were with the ritual. The boomers was the master class that Hitler wanted to build. Okay, they were. People do have a lot of baby in crisis. They have a lot of babies in crisis, but the boomers was the superior master class that they wanted to build, and they definitely tortured these boomers a lot. And they had opportunities. They had the plot of land. They had this. And I said, I worked, I made, I this, I that. And then of the way that they were with all these things that they were thinking that were working was mainly they're being dissociated from what it means. The generation, the Pluto generation after them would be the Pluto Libras. They were like, okay, rape inside marriage is also bad. There is, there are no married couples. Let me say that. No married couples, no married couples. no married couples. It's not enough housing for these single men and women.